So apparently meat does not actually remove, on Zoom, it would appear that the speakers, the sound coming from the speakers from Zoom were automatically subtracted from the microphone input. It would
But
appear that meat does not do that.
okay, so I'm going to start the recording now.
So recordings all on you.
Yep, always me.
There's captions. They don't work very well. Or maybe I just don't talk very well.
This is the Android Buffet Podcast, episode number 553, recorded Tuesday, August 24th, 2021, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Dum, dum, dum.
So welcome to a very special Tuesday episode of the show, which means there's less for us to talk about because we have not had a full week since the last time we talked.
Yes.
So what are
It
we
has not
doing
been a
here?
full week.
What are we doing here
We're
on a
doing-
Tuesday?
We're here because I'm not going to be here on a Thursday.
Okay,
Or
what's
Wednesday.
What's happening on Thursday? Are you going somewhere fun that you would like to share with the group?
I don't know.
Okay, then I'm glad I didn't go with that optional musical number about your destination.
Oh, okay.
I was
We will report next week on whether it was fun or not.
okay.
It's supposed to be thunderstorming all weekend.
Well, that happened to me. So my brother has children. I, as you may have gathered, listening to me all these years, do not. So we made reservations to go to the new Legoland. So I decided to tag along with my brother and his kids. And over this weekend, there was some sort of like hurricane. So there's nothing more fun that I can think of than going to an outdoor theme park in what was not actually a hurricane, but we'll go with tropical storm-like conditions.
It was rainy. There was a little bit of wind.
Got soaked. When I say soaked, I'm referring to everything, both my inner and outer garments. So, by the way, this was my first Legoland experience. I did consider visiting the one in Florida, but I did get to see what is the largest Legoland, apparently.
And how big is the largest Legoland?
Bigger than the other Legolands. I didn't see any stats. I just saw the sign that said this is the largest of the Legolands, Legoland, New York, in the beautiful town of Goshen, New York.
Ah,
Yes. This is the place they refer to when they say land of Goshen.
I've never heard anyone refer to the land of Goshen.
Really? It's a biblical
Really?
reference.
Ah,
Anyway, I used to make jokes about it. I've driven past Goshen many times, but until recently, other than the Harness Racing Museum, there wasn't really much that attracted to Goshen that I could think of. So now there's a Legoland there.
yay!
So I went to Legoland. I got wet. I came back.
I would have imagined Legoland would be inside.
No, the one in Florida isn't inside.
Oh,
They did have,
okay.
like buildings which had things inside. For example, they had a factory tour. And they
That
had,
sounds like fun.
yes, it's like one of those AGV vehicle things. Where the vehicle runs along a magnetic wire in the floor that keeps it where it's supposed to go without any tracks.
When you say AGV, you mean anti-gravity vehicle?
I believe it stands for automatic guided vehicle.
Oh, well, that's considerably less exciting.
Well, again, it's state of the art theme park technology. Haven't you been watching Disney Plus's Behind the Attractions?
I'm going to go with no.
I'm sorry, I find technology of all sorts very interesting. So, theme park technology has obviously evolved. So, you've been on, I assume, a theme park ride that goes along a track?
I have. We call them roller coasters.
No, I was referring to something a little slower. Let's say Haunted Mansion.
Kiddie roller coasters?
Well, let's say Haunted Mansion. I assume you've been on that at some point.
I
Or
don't think so.
It's a Small World,
I've been on the
Jungle Cruise.
yeah, we've been on the Small World. Yes, but
Okay,
I don't know if that's on a. I mean, that's just on a circle,
it's on a track.
like seats. They go around and around.
Oh no, you're thinking of Carousel of Progress, not It's a Small World. Carousel of Progress is
Oh,
in a circular building that moves around. But
yes.
It's a Small World has little boats, and the boats are actually on a track that's underwater. Same thing with Jungle Cruise, which originally did not have a track but now does, so the boats can't veer off course. So in a
Well,
lot
that
of
is considerably less exciting.
yeah, so a lot of the newer rides, what they do is they have essentially a magnetic wire in the floor, and that's what guides the vehicle. So it's not actually connected, but that's the wire that keeps it going. For example, have you ever been in the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror?
Yes.
So at one point in that ride, your vehicle goes across the floor instead of it's supposed to be an elevator, but it moves in a non-elevator direction.
Okay.
That's actually an AGV, an automatic guided
I would like
vehicle.
to think of AGV as an anti-gravity vehicle.
Okay,
Anti-gravity is significantly more exciting.
so I'm assuming, having been on that ride, you did not know that the entire set of seats that you sit in for that ride are actually an autonomous vehicle.
I did not.
So the vehicle is on a lift, and that's the elevator. So when it gets to a certain level, the entire vehicle leaves the elevator, goes across the floor, which is that weird trippy period, and then it goes into another shaft that goes up and down. Then it goes back, and again exits back to the bottom and returns to its original location.
Now I'm going to have to watch the whole behind the theme park thing.
That's not the only. I also recommend they have another one with the history of all of the Disney parks. There's an older one that was from a few, maybe from last year, that was narrated, that goes through the history of all the parks, and then there's a new one which is Behind the Attractions, where they did 5 episodes so far. I don't know if they have plans for any more, but I like technology, not just tech that I have. You know, if I had the technological know-how, I could always, build my own theme park in the basement. Didn't you hear about that?
Probably wouldn't be the largest theme park, but that'd be cool. That'd be cool.
Didn't you
It
hear
would be
about those?
uniquest.
Didn't you hear about that family that recreated part of Disney? I think it was Land or World, I forget, in their basement, like a scaled down version, and then somebody who built a scaled down version. I forget which roller coaster in their backyard. People apparently had a lot of time during the pandemic.
Interesting.
It is, and that's why we have our secondary branding that I still haven't figured out how to work into things. I've been thinking about it. Of Techno Buffet, because we talk tech. It's not always.
We do.
Yeah.
We rarely stick to the topic. We tend to stray wildly.
Yeah.
And
But
that's okay.
But on a clerical note, I did spend some time working on another project. I noticed, not that anybody complained, that both our automatic Twitter notifications and our automatic Facebook notifications had stopped working. Apparently, Android Buffet did not have a privacy policy. So apparently that disables your, since in order to get automatic posting, you need to sign up for an app, even though it isn't really an app. I had to go and fill out some paperwork and write a privacy policy.
And what did you say?
Well,
We don't keep your information. We don't care about your information.
yeah, but ultimately it's pointless because the only user of the app is me or the site itself. There's no users. Their idea is that this is a third-party app that's being used by other people, not an app that is just being used to connect a website to their service.
Well, I bet you're using all kinds of your information.
Possibly, but I figure, also I discovered,
Are you capable of deleting your own information if you were to request that you do that?
yes. So my privacy policy says that any commenters on the site will have their comments deleted. It doesn't say anything about users, so only people who comment. So if you comment on one of the episode show notes, which again are essentially blog posts on a WordPress site, then you would, if you asked us to remove those comments at some point in the future, of course we would do so. That's our entire privacy policy.
All right. I like simple and understandable by laypersons.
Yeah. Also, I noticed that I had not put HTTPS in a bunch of places. So the site has always been well, not always, has been for probably like since Let's Encrypt came around. I automatically at that point set it up for SSL, but I apparently never updated the links in a few places. So again, I did a few things, and I'm still trying to figure out again the transition. However, if you do go to technobuffet.com, you do get redirected to androidbuffet.com until I figure out the logistics of it. I still want to sort of make it
Well, that's a good start.
Well, what I really want, and I was sort of figuring out a good way to do it, especially with the HTTPS, is that if you redirect from from Techno Buffet to Android Buffet, that the only thing that really changes is the logo at the top. Changes from the Android Buffet logo to the Techno Buffet logo, but otherwise it looks the same. But I couldn't figure out a good way to do that, because the easiest way is to have like a query string at the end of the URL. But then that would again, I'd worry about Google indexing all of the extra query strings.
Yeah.
As if they were new sites. And so I'm trying to think of like a dead simple way of doing it that would indicate that the redirect, so it could show the alternate logo, but otherwise be identical. And
can you not take a look at the host and make a decision on what what logo gets displayed based on the host?
If I have it so that each site, well, again, if I have it so it's serving the same pages, whether it's Techno Buffet or Android Buffet, then yes. But if I want Techno Buffet to just redirect, and then still show the Android Buffet URL, but then just change the logo, that's a little more complicated. Otherwise, I'm running two parallel sites, even though they may have the same content. I suppose I could set it.
You can't just point Techno Buffet at the same IP address as Android Buffet?
It is. What I'm saying is if I'm serving both sites out of the same WordPress instance, which is fine,
Yes.
what's going to happen is it's going to be indexed as if it was two separate sites.
Yes.
And that I was trying to avoid.
Ah.
Well, I feel like
can't help you with that.
Well, again, all I really want is sort of this like Easter egg of if you go to one side or the other, it just changes the logo. So I'm only trying to figure out how do I feed which site without changing the URL. How do I feed which site you actually tried to visit? Other than I could set a cookie in the browser. I don't think anybody would complain if we had the display Techno Buffet versus Android Buffet logo cookie. That seems like a user preference I can record.
I don't think that'll work.
Probably not. But the only thing that would work 100% is the query string, but we're still back to that creates another set of URLs. Although I think there's probably something with search engine optimization and to ignore that information. How do all those those extra things that people use for tracking do it? Those aren't query strings, are they? I've never looked at them that closely. But if anybody has any ideas for like a simple way of doing this, otherwise, the other option I thought of doing was just having the essentially which logo comes up randomly change every time you refresh the page.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, so sometimes when you load the page, it'll say, and again, it wouldn't change anything but the logos. But we'll see. I have some other projects involving the theming because I keep meaning to sort of tweak the theme. the theme that we're using is no longer being updated. So I can either change the theme completely or start hacking it myself. So maybe a little of column A, a little of column B. So we'll see what I end up doing. I sort of like the theme right now because it's simple, but it is a bit narrow at times. It doesn't stretch to encompass the entire screen, which means on the laptop I'm using now, which is visible on the YouTube live stream, you'll see that there are giant black bars at either side. That's because the site does not stretch to fit a widescreen. So maybe it's time for us to go HD.
I like it.
Yeah. So let's see what else is going on. As I said, it's a short week, so I had a few things. I added a topic that had more speculative, but let's go through a few Android bits of news first. Google apparently gave phone makers extra money to avoid third-party app stores.
That sounds anti-competitive.
It is anti-competitive. It's, well, if you don't work with those other guys, we'll certainly give you a better deal if you give us what we call an exclusive. And that's,
well, when you say it like that, it doesn't sound anti-competitive.
Yeah, but the thing is, Google has a much bigger market share to begin with than those other guys. For example, what are the other stores? Pretty much for Android, the only other store of note is the Amazon store. There are a couple of small things. Samsung had its little thing for a while. And of course there's F-Droid, but no, I don't think anybody has bundled F-Droid. Well, maybe Lineage OS or something like that, but not any of the commercial manufacturers. So it's pretty much them competing with Amazon. So Amazon may be the little guy in the Android App Store space, but they're not exactly the little guy overall. So I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that. But again, it's just sort of this thing of, should you really be giving people extra money to avoid multiple app stores? And it may be that you could frame that as a security thing, that they can't guarantee, that they're trying to keep the experience safe, and if things are being installed from other places, then they can't guarantee the safety of the device. So on some level,
they can't guarantee the safety of the device with that from their own app store.
Yeah, but you understand what I'm saying.
I do. It's a flimsy excuse.
It
is how my dad would put it.
Yeah. No, I understand it isn't the best excuse. I'm just saying that I sort of understand the idea of saying, well, we can't control this, so we can't give you our seal of approval if everything isn't under our control, but we can't really control it either. So.
Yep.
So moving along, Android 12 is improving auto rotate by not just using the accelerometer, but using the camera. So the front-facing camera will determine essentially what angle your face is at, and try to use that to enhance the auto rotating.
Dude, is this not brilliant? This is just brilliant.
Well, it's better than face unlock. I never quite got face unlock.
But so if you're laying down in bed and you're on your phone, then it would rotate so that the phone's orientation is appropriate for your head, not for gravity. And I think that's just brilliant.
Well, I turn off auto rotate on my phone and only turn it on when I really want it in the other orientation for a practical reason. It never rotates the way I want it to. It is always going into the wrong alignment, and it drives me crazy. So I'd rather just deal with it myself.
Maybe gravity works differently where you are.
No, I just think that I keep messing up the accelerometer. What I want is manual rotate. I just want a button that says rotate. That's good enough for me right now, but I'll see if this works better. Android app ratings will be specific to the country and form factor.
Seems intelligent.
Well,
good change.
Form factor is one thing. What they're saying is that if your app has a bad experience on a tablet, it shouldn't affect the reviews on a phone. Okay, fine.
And that makes complete and total sense.
Yeah, and when it comes to country, again, some apps have country limitations, but the question is, what if I look at what Amazon did? And I'm using their store as an example. They started showing, American reviews, and then they said you can see reviews from other countries. So they didn't hide the reviews. They just said, okay, we recognize that people in your geographic region may be more attuned to the same needs as you, but we don't want to deny you that other stuff, so here it is also. So the question is, to what degree are they going to say that if everybody in England dislikes an app, then I'm not going to know about it? What if the app doesn't have that many American reviews and I can't make a decision based on those reviews, and I want to see some reviews from other countries? What if I want to know what the Germans think of the app? I'm not saying I do. Well, I'm not saying I don't care about what Germans think. I'm just saying... I'm more saying that what if I do want to see more information? Are they going to show it to me? Are they going... I don't mind them separating app by country and form factor. I'm just asking, can I also see the overall review?
I figure that may also help a lot for apps that are they're really only, they're available in a lot of different countries, but they only really work in like a US-centric app that you could technically download if you were in, the UK.
There are apps that I've tried to download where they've told me that it isn't available in my country. There's actually one app that it really annoys me. So there's this website that I use, and they have a mobile app, which would be useful for when I needed it. But the mobile app, because the website is a European website, the app only apparently works in Europe. But I'm a user of the website, so there's no legal reason why I shouldn't be able to use it. There's no economic reason that I can tell. But for some reason, they just didn't enable it for Americans. But yet, every time I log into the website, they keep telling me, well, why don't you use our app?
Because you won't let me use your app.
Well, I thought about writing them a letter and just saying, could you at least explain it to me? But, I decided I don't care enough at the moment. I will in the future, but right now. Moving along, Google Maps may finally show how much tolls will cost.
Wow. That would be nice. Then I won't go through the Queen's Tunnel 4 times a day.
Well, that's sort of the thing. They have always had the setting of avoid tolls.
Yeah.
And, I'm sort of the opinion that if I want to get somewhere, sometimes my time is worth more to me than my money. Although, admittedly, there are some things that I would sort of bypass to save a few dollars. So far, most of those I already know and bypass them. My biggest problem, as I've said with Google Maps, is that it doesn't know what I don't want to do. Now, sometimes it knows better than I do, but it doesn't really tell me. So I like to go way X. So I drive, up and down New York regularly, and I like to go on this specific route. It's my favorite route. Do you have some of those in Jacksonville, where it doesn't matter what Google says, you want to go this way?
No.
Okay, I have a few of those because the way that they send me is not a good driving experience. I'll give you an example. I don't like to make left turns. And I'm referring to...
you're a race car driver.
No, I don't like to make left turns where I am going across 4 lanes of busy traffic. I'm not saying I don't ever like to make left turns. I'm talking about in busy neighborhoods where there's traffic coming from both directions. I would rather go 1 block out of my way to a light where I can make a left turn. So that's understandable, right?
Yes.
So I
believe the UPS routing, truck routing system even takes that into account.
But Google doesn't take into account that I really do not want to take my life in my hands and try to speed past 2 lanes of traffic and make a left, while another 2 lanes of traffic are coming in that other direction and there's no light. They don't take things like that into account. So there are sometimes where, they're telling me, okay, this would be a minute faster. I'd rather take the extra minute. There are also a few routes where they never tell me to go the way that I want to go. And then after I ignore them and go that way, suddenly the calculation says that it's going to get there faster than if I took their advice after it reroutes. So they're like these minor Google Map issues that I don't know how to deal with. There are also some neighborhoods I don't want to drive through. again, that's because they're not as nice neighborhoods, and there are reasons to avoid them. I don't want to be in a dark. What's my best example? One time I was coming back from Kennedy Airport in New York, and it wanted to send me through this dingy, unsafe factory area, with buildings and disorderly characters. I'd rather go.
Yes.
And no lighting. I would rather go on the main thoroughfare, even though it's slightly longer, because I do not want to be in a dark, deserted street in the middle of the night with unsavory characters around.
Unsavory characters.
I live in New York. There are unsavory characters here. I'm not saying that they're all, there's this impression that New York is packed with unsavory characters, but there are some here. I'm sure that there's an unsavory element in Jacksonville somewhere.
No, we don't do unsavory.
Okay, I don't know what they call it there, but I'm sure that there are people in Jacksonville that you would feel you wanted to avoid.
There are certain places in
Yeah.
Jacksonville that I avoid in order to remain breathing.
Yeah, same sort of idea. And again, some of those neighborhoods are adjacent to places that I want to go to. So I would rather divert a few blocks. I'm not talking about going to the other side of the city, but I don't want to go down a potentially dangerous area if I don't have to. But again, Google doesn't know my opinion on the matter. I don't know how to teach it. So moving along, apparently Google Pay the new migration has not only been an external disaster, but it's also been an internal disaster.
Really?
Well, it's an annoyance. They took everybody who was on an app that nobody had a real big complaint about and made them all migrate to a new app where we had complaints. By the way, this is the same thing as Google Chat. I'm not going to say that they couldn't have moved people in a different way, but they migrated everybody to a new application, Hangouts to Chat, and they didn't have feature parity between the two, and there's some people who feel like they lost a bunch of features. So Google does this all the time. So what was the benefit? Just so that they could say they had a new and shiny thing?
Makes sense to me.
And with Google Pay, again, apparently it's the same thing, where there wasn't a clear vision of why they were doing this other than new shiny. There were a few other, things that they're promising now. You could have your Google credit card / bank account, but they've tried that before and it didn't quite work out. So
I'm sure there's a financial incentive as well.
yeah, but it's just, think of the users. And finally, in the app section, Chrome for Android will actually now allow multiple windows, just like you have on desktop.
What? That's crazy.
How many tabs do you have open on your mobile browser?
Like 3?
3? Let's see, how many do I actually have open? Now, I don't use Chrome, I use Firefox.
Right, which is what makes it super easy to tell how many you have open, because there's a number on the tab button.
Isn't there a number on the tab button in Chrome?
I have no idea.
There used to be. 43.
Jesus, dude.
I have to clean up.
Really?
Well, no, I have these things I keep meaning that they're there to remind me that I need to do something about them. For example, I have a tab open to a project on building a smart menorah using a ESP8266 chip and a bunch of LEDs, and I wanted to do that before Hanukkah, which is the last week in November. So I have the tab open to remind me because it's been sitting there for 3 months and I have not attempted to build a smart electric menorah. And I figure the tab will just keep annoying me by its openness until I actually do that, because I bought all the parts, except for a menorah. I need to find a inexpensive electric menorah that I can pop open and rip out the guts of and replace with a new set of guts.
I don't even know what that is.
What? Guts? Or a menorah?
Menorah?
Oh, you've never seen one of those? It is
I don't know.
okay, think of it as a candelabra that is used on Hanukkah. So it is candles. There's a religious tradition of candle lighting, but people often, because they don't want to put the candles next to the window, even though that would be the traditional, people put an electric one in the window and then light their candles for elsewhere in the house, because the candles only last for a shorter period of time, whereas the electric will last all night. Think of it like the Jewish equivalent of Christmas lights. It isn't, but analogies work. So I want to rig up one of these because every night, out of the 8 lights on this thing, you light up an additional one until the holiday is over. So rather than me going and what I've been doing for my entire life, which is screwing in another bulb, so, unscrewing the bulb so it's not lit and then screwing it in when it's time.
Yeah.
I wanted to put, to wire it up so that this little chip could essentially do all of it for me. I thought it would be a cute little project. So they make these plastic electric menorahs that are wired up. What I wanted to do was, again, crack an old one open, take out the electronics inside it, which are essentially just power, put this in, wire it up so that it would essentially turn on these lights. I got LEDs to replace the old school, those screw-in like night light bulbs. So again, thought it would be a fun project. Have not gotten to it yet, but the tab is there, and for the day that I actually get around to doing it. I could even add in, voice control. Hey George.
That thing everybody hates.
Hey George, turn on my menorah. Again, just for the amusement value. But
yeah.
So finally,
did I tell you that I installed smart switches?
You did?
Not smart switches, smart plugs.
Outlets, or you're talking about plug-in plugs?
Outlets, straight up outlets.
What brand?
GoSund.
Oh, you bought some GoSuns. Okay, I'm familiar with them. I have some of their light switches. Did you use the GoSun provided firmware, or did you wipe it and replace it with something more open?
I am currently using the GoSun provided firmware and the GoSun app.
Okay. Do you like them?
Yeah, I think I could do better.
Me too. That's why I got rid of them.
So they have power monitoring in them.
Yeah.
But they only tell you what it is right now. And I'd like to see some historical.
So you want to do what I did, which is change the firmware. If you can, I don't know.
I've been told that if I connect to it with the Tuya app, then I could connect to them directly in Home Assistant.
Yeah, there is a Tuya integration, but that's still cloud connected. The reason why I like to wipe the software is I like local, 100% local.
All right.
So I'll give you
after my trip, one of the goals is to start automating this house.
Okay, well, if you want, I could help you find, let's say, hacking-friendly stuff.
I would love it.
Okay, well, there are a lot. It depends on how much you're willing to do. I'll give you an example. The first, all of the GoSund single switches that I have in this house, I bought them specifically, and they discontinued the model I was using because if you unscrewed the top of the switch, there were flashing points for you to essentially put jumpers in and flash the firmware without you having to do anything special. The newer ones don't have that, however, so I switched to Treat Life. Now, I have never tried to flash a Treat Life switch, but according to the internet, which I trust on this because there were pictures, what you need is a flashing jig, which you can print with a 3D printer that allows you to touch the chip without having to solder on cables. So essentially, it's just like a little thing that you put that's the right size to go over it with a few pins pressing on the connections, and you can flash the thing that way. Also, there's a company that does sell pre-flashed light switches, and I know they do smart plugs, and smart light bulbs, but I don't think they currently have a U.S. outlet. But again, I can do the appropriate research with you. But that actually brings.
I like the plug. It installed really nicely, and especially using Waco or Wago connectors. It's
Yeah.
super easy.
In wall is
Wago.
good if you have deep sockets. In older buildings, you may notice that some of the essentially gang boxes are very shallow, and you can't fit these smarter switches in.
Yep, yep.
So I have not installed any smart outlets. I've only done like the plugs that go on top of the outlet.
Yep.
But again, at some point I'll get to it.
So my first one was after my 3D printer caught on fire. I
That
wanted to
sounds
know
like a
how much
story.
power it was.
Did I miss a? Did you tell us about this?
I don't know.
I don't have a
But anyway, I
recollection
wanted
of.
to know how much power it was pulling. So that was part of the.
Yeah, and I would do that with a smart plug rather than an outlet.
Well, one of the outlets. So I did this on two outlets. One of the outlets annoyed me because when I raised my desk, sometimes it would disconnect. The plug would go to just the right angle or whatever where it would lose power.
Yeah. So you
I
had
needed to
a
replace it.
what year
I
was
needed
the
to replace
building
it
built?
anyway.
When did this outlet get installed?
Like 3 years ago,
Oh,
2 years ago.
It should. Oh, that's poor quality.
It
if
was
it's already
just
failing.
it was a poor installation. That's all.
Okay, because I know I have a lot of. I've been slowly replacing them over the years, but I have. When I started, I had all these outlets that were installed with the building in the 70s, and they wouldn't hold a plug anymore because after a while it wears out. And but if you have new ones, then they're doing that. Oh well. But either way, I'm always this is what I'm doing. So based on my recent success, I have gotten authorization to expand. So I've convinced my relatives to let me do smart switches in their residence. So I just ordered a 4-pack of dimmers and a 4-pack of smart switches from Treat Life, which has from what I can see, has a good reputation for inexpensive pricing and easy hackability to wipe their software and replace it. So I have a pack of them going, and the next time I'm sitting in my apartment, which, as you may recall, last week I was, and this week I'm not, I will get out my new flashing jig that I had 3D printed, and I will attempt to wipe the software and replace it. And I do recommend that. That actually leads into one of the things that I put on here that is not a news story. So I put a home automation. I put two things on here. One is a news story, and the other one is, of course, what I was going to talk to you about.
Yes, yes, yes.
So Smartthings Edge was released. So this is Smartthings, which is the Samsung home automation platform that they bought. And apparently they've decided that their Edge product will allow developers to build local control in the Lua programming language, which is apparently very simple to use.
Lua is a very simple language.
I've never used Lua, but I've heard. So that would allow. So Samsung, or at least the SmartThings division, has realized that they need a way for people to do local control, and they've come up with this little way to do it, where developers can write these local control drivers.
I like it.
So it can still be controlled by SmartThings, but you can also have local control. But for me, I've been looking into ESP Home because I've been using Tasmota because I started out with Sonoff devices, which can be flashed with Tasmota. By the way, my latest Sonoff device, which was my upgraded fan with the capacitors, has apparently been lost in the mail. So I have arranged to order one more, and if this one never shows up, I'm giving up. I have mixed reviews sometimes with things that are parcel shipped from China. Not everything, but it happens sometimes. The Pine Time worked out nicely.
Are you still happy with it?
It survived being it survived the rainstorm on Sunday. It was on my arm all day, and it is still running despite the fact that it went through a rainstorm. So, again, it is what it is. It is a $27 hobbyist device that, again, has software open source software support that is not completely baked yet, but every version gets new enhancements. So that's nice for tinkering. But I want I wanted to work with ESP Home because I've mostly been using Tasmota, and ESP Home is more sensor based. Tasmota was mostly designed for switch control. It
Right.
does switches and lightings. It does have sensors, but if you want even more sensors, ESP Home is your thing, and it is sponsored by Home Assistant. So the original developer couldn't handle what was needed. So, and I'm simplifying. So the Home Assistant team in Nabukasa, which is their sort of, I'm not going to say for-profit arm. It's essentially the arm of Home Assistant that actually takes money from people in order to support developers. So they offer some extra products, but they use the money to hire developers to work on Home Assistant full time. So it's sort of this self-perpetuating idea. They decided that they would sponsor ESP Home. So it is a Home
Cool.
Assistant sponsored project, as in Home. It is still open source. Home Assistant is essentially providing that support. Now, there's a built-in integration. There's an API that ESP Home uses, so you can still use something like MQTT, but with ESP Home, you can compile it so that it uses the ESP Home API that Home Assistant can integrate with, and program it. And the other thing is, it's a little harder because you have to set up the device and what it actually is using a YAML configuration file. So the file says,
Ooh, YAML, evil.
not necessarily, but the file essentially says what type of device this is, what driver it's using, and how it presents itself to the network. And it supports automatic discovery. So once you do that, when you turn the device on, Home Assistant will find it and import it as a device.
At least we hope it does.
Well, that assumes you did the right thing. So I've been looking into this for several reasons. One is I actually have a sensor that isn't very well supported under Tasmota. So this is the BME 680 sensor. So the BME 680 generates data, but Bosch, who makes the sensor, provides a library to convert that into usable data. And that library is not included in Tasmota, but it is available in ESP Home. It can be compiled in because you compile your own ESP Home instance. The reason is that it's technically a closed source library. So I can get better readings because Bosch their code actually tunes properly and calibrates the sensor that they made. And there are other things that can be done. Also, ESP Home supports the ESP32 chip, which is only limitedly supported by Tasmota, whereas they only guarantee support for the ESP8266. Now I have both. So I bought some ESP32s to play with. The 32s have Bluetooth, whereas the 8266 does not. So I have a few projects I can do with Bluetooth now that I have some boards to work with.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, but if you want sensors around your house.
Fair enough.
So one of the reasons that I want sensors around the house is that I do things with them. For example, I have temperature sensors running off 8266 boards that are running Tasmota. But if I want to switch it, I may switch the sensors to ESP Home and only keep the switches on Tasmota for now. And we'll see. I want to play with both and see what works for me. But ESP Home definitely has more drivers for those types of exotic sensors that I need.
Cool.
And again, you're essentially building a custom device. You're configuring it, you're compiling, and they do have tools to help you compile and put in all the components that they support and set the configuration. And then you get a file you upload into the device. So how often do I have to reconfigure the software on something? If it's working, it's working. So I'm excited about this possibility. The only problem is, with me being busy with other things and having multiple projects, I don't know how fast I'll do all of this. I saw one ESP32 project where, because it has a Bluetooth chip and a Wi-Fi chip, you could use it to control the switchbox curtain, which, as you may recall, I have one. I'm controlling it using a Bluetooth dongle plugged into a computer. but having a little dedicated hub running off of a $10 chip that's plugged in somewhere would make it more self-contained.
Interesting.
I am always thinking of things. So a few other things. That's ESP Home we're thinking about. Amazon's apparently planning on opening department stores.
But I couldn't find out where. Where are they planning to start? I know they did that thing in Seattle. But that was like a gazillion years ago.
The audio off of the YouTube recording for the last 4 minutes. Oh well. Sometimes when things fail, they just fail. And again, every time I think I got one thing working, another thing fails. So let's finish up. Let me see if I can do a backup recording of the last few minutes. I don't know whatever happens. Finally, Windows XP has turned 20.
Oh, the best operating system ever.
I'm fond of Linux.
Okay.
And in one final story, China has passed a new privacy law aimed at protecting users' personal data.
Really? Why do I find this hard to believe?
Why? Because America has not passed any comprehensive privacy laws, and China has, a country that is known for not necessarily being the most private and having a very large surveillance state. In an op-ed
let's go with that.
in Chinese media outlet People's Court Daily, the National People's Congress lauded the new legislation. Personalization is a result of user choice, and true personalized recommendations must ensure the user's freedom to choose without compulsion. Therefore, users must be given the right not to make use of personalized recommendation functions.
Okay, cool. I guess that doesn't stop the government from having their information. It just means private companies can't. Okay. I understand this more.
Okay, so shall we adjourn so that you can take your exciting vacation abroad?
Woohoo! Yep. Let's adjourn. Let's call it a day. Let's call it a night.
Yeah, well, I have to
Call it a
go
week.
piece
Call it a
together part of the
podcast.
podcast that was lost in the crash from the YouTube backup.
All right, man. Thank you very much, peoples.
The best laid plans, right? No matter what I do, something breaks.
And it would appear, at least here, I don't have an option for Meet to do the recording.
Yeah, that's because you have to have a premium account, I think.
Oh, well, that's no fun.
Yeah. But again, I think I may go with the only option I could think of that will work 100% of the time.
What's that? Not recording?
I was going to go with a digital recorder that sits in between the computer and the stream. Essentially, a dedicated hardware device rather than doing it in software, because for some reason Audacity, which is usually pretty reliable, crashed on me. And that was
That's
what was
crazy.
That was what was doing the recording. And I've been using it for years. I don't know why it crashed, but oh well. So until next week, when I believe we will be back to our normal Thursday schedule, is that the first? Yeah, that is the first. Where has the time gone? Until then, Jerry.
Until then, bye, folks.